Hello. I think they put me first because I get to have the exciting conversation around AI and blockchain. I don't know about you all, but on social media, I get a lot of takes that, yeah, AI and blockchain, the new revolution of businesses. But then they give all these wishy-washy answers on what that actually means. And so today, I'm going to go through an agenda that roughly walks through, what AI and blockchain are, how they can work together, and yeah, in Solana in particular, I will be showing for sure. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about myself and why they chose me for this role. So as you can see, I have most of my career has been spent in AI before getting in and out of blockchain. Also of note, I worked for Riot Games, which many of you know, the League of Legends World Championships are happening in Korea this year. I'll actually go to the finals on Sunday. All right, so now let's actually get into the real meat of the talk here. So there's actually pretty huge differences in the core technologies of AI and blockchain. So AI, I won't read every little bit of this slide, but AI is essentially big data that you're trying to pattern match into a model, an input into an output. It often has some probabilistic, you're aggregating all of this data to try to understand and make sense of it. Blockchain, on the other hand, is usually small amounts of data. You're trying to come to agreement or consensus on any sort of update, and any individual can kind of submit their own. So they're really, really technically speaking, fundamentally different technologies. But what do they actually do? So this distributed system that is AI, that is trying to take an input and output, they predict, they help us understand things. They come up with model standards. So large language models like ChatGPT, you have convolutional neural networks that form stable diffusion, so Midjourney, all of these art AI products. And they tend to not be very transparent. It's hard necessarily to understand what inputs versus outputs, like how it actually arranged that. Whereas the blockchain is, on the other hand, everybody agrees on the state of the data. Everybody agrees on all the state changes. It's very transparent. Yeah, so you really start seeing that the technologies are meant for very different purposes. And so the output, like I mentioned a few before, AI, you have your content creation, you have your business strategy, and you even have a lot of dev efficiencies tooling. Whereas blockchain is more about, if everybody can agree and there's on data structures and all the state transitions, you can have payments, digital asset creation, marketplaces. So again, very, very different outcomes on what these technologies enable. But they can work together. So let's first talk about how blockchain can integrate into existing technologies. So I have this graph here of basically what typically you'd say is like a machine learning life cycle. This can take multiple forms, but bear with me here. So you just kind of, you have your data gathering, data preparation, all the way into deployment of the model. So you have blockchain, which is this very efficient way of doing payments and marketplaces and all these things. So there's an example of gathering data would be something like HiveMapper. It's this decentralized image capture. It's on Solana. That's taking this model that Google used to have, that you drive around a car, they pay a bunch of individuals and take a bunch of street view maps. It's very expensive because you have to pay individuals to do this all the time, and updating the maps is really expensive. But if you just decentralize it and have people just buy a dash cam and then just drive as they would normally, then you get much cheaper coverage of your maps. You get live data. It's kind of similar to Waze, if you've ever used that app. I know that Kakao Maps is very popular here in Korea, but you basically can update live all this data much more efficiently by paying them in cryptocurrency. And here is a live map of the Hive mapper data. All the little purple little blobs is where they have mapped. They've mapped a very alarming percentage of much of the world already. You can kind of see in the top left there, Korea is very well mapped, which is exciting. But yeah, over 83 million kilometers mapped already. Another part of this is data preparation. So the data preparation step is, getting the data ready to be put into a model. So typically, you need some sort of classification, the standard, like if you're trying to predict a specific outcome, you kind of want to know what those outcomes are. And sometimes it requires humans to look at the data, and then you put it through the models, and then the models can pattern match for future observations. But you have to have that original data set. So one example that classical is Scale.ai. That's the little logo on the bottom left there. Then you have Amazon, AWS is Mechanical Turk. But on the right there is actually a Korean company called Synesis One. They have a platform that pays out in cryptocurrency that anybody in the world can come on, form a business by going through and annotating. They do mostly text now, but you can come through and label the sentence structure. And what's great about this is without forming, as far as I know, any business relationship with this secure metawork, this secure metawork is able to find somebody and a group of people in countries all over the world, and they can label through the Synesis One platform permissionlessly. It's just forming these very, very peer-to-peer, frictionless relationships. They didn't have to sign a contract. They didn't have to set up payment rails. That cryptocurrency gave that to them. It's transparent, the incentives to fill out the annotations on the Synesis One platform, and this person was able to do their work. Data wrangling step, I was not able to find a great example. Cryptocurrency can't solve everything yet, but there are plenty of examples on the train, test, and deploying the models. So Micro AI is this hedge fund. They use a decentralized compute called Render to train, test, and deploy. So Render is basically graphical processing units. Think I'm a video gamer and I just want to use my GPU when I'm not using it to make a little money. You can pay, cryptocurrency is very efficient rails to be able to pay people to run that compute while they're idle. Or I could just form a business if I'm living in a country or a region, maybe I have hydroelectric power that is really cheap to run. I can run on the Render network and get paid. And the compute is very, very expensive, as we'll see in a second. And this is actually becoming pretty popular, especially with more and more blockchains moving from proof of work to proof of stake. There's a lot of leftover GPU capacity in the blockchain world. At the same time, there's a lot of supply chain issues with semiconductor industry. So to fill that gap, a lot of companies are incentivizing hosting this excess GPU so that you can train machine learning models, deploy them, all those nice things. So the main story here is this lower cost, low friction, very transparent incentives that blockchains can provide, and that is just going to help complex, hard, computationally businesses like AI. And here's putting some numbers to it. IO.net is a very similar offering. You can pay to rent GPUs, and this just describes the cost structure. You're talking orders of magnitude less per hour on very, very performant hardware. And again, this is just because people are just doing it in their idle time. You don't have to host a whole new data center or do active management. And the other really nice thing about these is they spike with demand much better. You have this live marketplace. As we mentioned, one of the main benefits of blockchain is marketplaces and price discovery. So if there is a spike in demand in the offering, that price will be listed out and more people will come onto the network. That's much harder to do for an AWS or Google Cloud to spike up with demand because they're kind of constrained by their physical data centers. And this idea of creating physical infrastructure with blockchain efficiency is not new. You actually could argue that Bitcoin is that. Bitcoin is paying a bunch of people to run mining software to secure the network. A lot of this I'm talking about today with GPUs and Hive Mapper taking images is just a next iteration of that, and specifically applied to AI applications or different parts of the AI stack. But you can see some of those logos I talked about here today. Another few maybe to talk about is Helium. It's a decentralized internet protocol, but it could also do, and the way it does it is individuals can host Wi-Fi or 5G receivers in their homes. What you end up having is this very robust network of providers. And the other really interesting thing is they can actually post geolocation data. So you can start getting, combined with Hive Mapper, this way of syncing where people actually are and record that data, with permissions. Again, another benefit of blockchain is the transparency of it all. So we'll get that in a second. So how can AI help blockchain? So this one is actually pretty simple. I don't know if, I'm kind of a nerd, so I watched the GitHub autopilot talk the other day. It's a lot of ease of development. So this is actually pretty standard. I won't go into this too much. What I'm really interested in is products that can be built with AI and blockchain. So we've talked about how with existing stacks, blockchain can help AI and how AI can help blockchain. But what about them combined in an end product? What can be interesting there? Well, attesting and credentialing. So you've heard a lot about ZK, oftentimes in the context of a roll-up. But what ZK actually is the ability to prove statements in code. Things like, did you run this model to get that output? Well, it turns out that actually matters a lot, as we'll see on the next slide. But even things like historical records. If I post a proof of some content I created, say an image or some writing, I can put it on the blockchain and it will record forever the history that I did it at that moment and nobody attested to it beforehand. Or maybe said better, if somebody comes out with a year later, I can show the world that I came up with that earlier on. And this can go outside of just content creation. It can go into, science and AI. So this is where it really gets exciting for an AI model. There's a lot of people trying to understand who did what and when. And so being able to have these blockchains where everybody in the world has visibility when something gets put onto the blockchain, you can do this attestation there. And then also there's just content. Stable diffusion, ChatGPT, writing stories. If you have this engine that shows when things came into existence, and you have marketplaces and price discovery, you can kind of combine these things. So I think a lot of the next generation of content creation will integrate blockchain to understand who did what and allow them to monetize all in one place. That's really hard to do today. You have to either do it through a single marketplace, or you have to trust these entities with not the greatest incentives. Maybe they can, use your work in a way that you didn't want to, or really, oftentimes they are very, very value extractive. Like you've heard in the game industry, where most gaming platforms take around 30% from the creators. As I alluded to earlier, this what is truth is a really, really big part of this. If I can prove statements like this came from this model or this came at this time, you can do things with blockchain that are way more transparent. And even things like authenticity of an image. Hive Mapper has a bunch of people taking images of with their cars. You have Helium that is attesting to the exact location. If you sync that data with your image, then you have a much better proof that this is a real image from a real location. If you can start adding those things, then regulatory bodies can understand there is an accuracy and an authenticity to this. But then there's a bunch of other things, just consumer protections, privacy. A lot of these technologies I'm talking about can have applications in those elements as well. And you can even ask, what is human? I know that this has a lot of contested and maybe some controversies around the exact application of it. But this is actually the idea of why WorldCoin came into existence. If you wonder why their CEO, Sam Altman, is a AI founder, he founded OpenAI, it's because as you get deeper and deeper into content generation and ChatGPT, you start questioning more and more what is an AI-generated video or text and what is a real human doing it. And so that's where blockchain, this is another area where blockchain and AI are interweaving. It doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of debate on what the right way of the authenticity of a human. Maybe you actually just want the authenticity of a singular device. So somebody like Samsung or another manufacturer could use the blockchain to attest, that this was definitely this device that produced this image or this piece of content. But WorldCoin is, that's quite literally why it came into existence. The part that I think that's coming up next that is really interesting, I'll try to summarize all this text. Haseeb is one of the managing partners at Dragonfly Capital, which is the very prominent VC in cryptocurrency. And he talks a lot about this machine-to-machine economy. And this isn't necessarily little drones flying around paying each other, which it could be, but even AI is machine to machine. I talked about Synesis One being, there's a completely different business that is able to spin up permissionlessly and then pay people to annotate on the Synesis One platform. Over time, those are going to be more and more and more automated. You can have a data AI that wants to train on more data. And then it can just ask for more data, and any entity, it could be a machine, it could be a human, it doesn't care where the data necessarily comes from. As long as they're getting paid, that's fine. So more and more, those are going to become other machines. If maybe it needs more energy, maybe it needs more compute. And so you can start asking for these resources in an automated way. And instead of having to set up a bunch of payment rails and a bunch of bank accounts and a bunch of international foreign exchange, you could just spin up a blockchain. Computers are really, really good at just generating key pairs, generating cryptographic keys that they can get paid for and be paid. And this is a frictionless economy. So again, it's transparent to all parties what they're going to get if I produce this data, or if I give you this energy, or if I give you this compute, what are you going to give me in return? And they're also really good at marketplaces and price discovery. So this, in a not too distant future, you're going to have a lot of efficient things just go on in the background of our lives without even necessarily thinking about it. Think, we have our phones, like how much are we connected with those? There can be a lot more power behind those. Maybe there's AI processing and digital assistants. Maybe your digital assistant is asking for things for you without you necessarily even knowing it. It's asking some other computer in there to heat up your house, and you need energy for your house, and it wants to do it in an efficient way. So it may buy some efficient energy for you. Or maybe have something delivered to your door automatically without you even knowing it, just because it knows it has enough money because it generated some money that you gave it through, I don't know, maybe you provided it some data by driving around that it then sold for some wage, and then you got home and you had dinner prepared for you, and you didn't even have to think about paying it. It just all happened automatically because your digital assistant worked, that is AI, worked with blockchain to have this efficient marketplace that could get you to the thing that you wanted. So you can think about this entire economy just around your own personal preferences. So why Solana for AI? I didn't leave myself too much time for this. I didn't want to just shill forever, but we have a very private ecosystem. Even at the depths of the bear, this is, I don't know, 4 days after FTX collapsed, we had our builders really advocating for why Solana was a great place to build. It's, it's low cost, like orders of magnitude below others. So that's when you talk about efficient economies. Yeah, that's part of the way to choose Solana. And we have a bunch of integrations today that you can check out. We have a ChatGPT plugin. We have really reduced storage costs for all these models and other attestations. We have ZK, everything that we've talked about today. Okay, that's my talk today. I'm happy to talk about the future in the Q&A.
Please give a big round of applause for a great presentation. Thank you for being the first. I think that we have time for one short question, and then for those who have other pressing questions, please make use of the other wrap-up interview that will be held during lunchtime. So just one short question. What is the biggest benefit that blockchain has among other technologies? So this was a pre-asked question.
Yeah, I think it's collaboration. So it's really hard if I'm running a business to want to go through all of these other platforms in order to serve, what I want to serve. I have to go through a cloud hosting platform. I have to go through a payment network. Whereas on a blockchain, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I know transparently how I can serve my business, whatever it is, and I know how everybody's going to interact with me. It's code. And I think that's like an incredibly powerful concept, just like the secure tool in Africa doing business with Synesis One in Korea without any sort of business relationship. I think that two-step process will just become 3 and then 4 and then 5, and you'll get these incredible economies and business networks that'll form without anybody having to go through a bunch of contract and negotiations.